Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Khalid bin Waleed. Okay? And we are in this new section, and it starts as follows. Go ahead and listen to this as you're driving. You're on the subway. Keep an eye out for weirdos. You are hiking. You are doing whatever you're doing. Let's begin. Bismillah. Asha bin Qais was one of the most remarkable men of his time. Coming from a princely family of the Kinda, he was a man of many parts. An able general, a clever chief, a bold warrior, an accomplished poet, he had a fertile imagination and a smooth tongue. A man of charm and wit, he was the most colorful of the many colorful personalities thrown up by the apostasy. But he had one big flaw. He was treacherous. Historians have noted that his was the only family that produced 4 breakers of packs in an unbroken line. Ashaz, his father, his son, and his grandson. Ashaz lived close to the borderline between virtue and evil, between faith and unbelief, but never quite crossed the line. Practicing a kind of moral and spiritual brinkmanship, he was clever enough to get away with it, and now in late January 633, the second week of Zulqa'd 11 Hijri, he faced the Muslim army in battle. The battle did not last long. Ashaz was defeated, though the defeat was not decisive. Okay, so though the defeat was not decisive, he speedily withdrew his army from the battlefield and retreated to the fort of Nujair. So the fort of Nujair, where he was joined by other dissident clans. Here, Ashaz prepared for a siege. So we notice a lot of sieging of forts in this time. And the whole point of a siege is like you do this blockade, and starvation really comes into play if you don't end the siege. Just after this battle, the corps of Ikrimah also arrived. The 3 Muslim corps under the overall command of Muhajir advanced on Nujair and laid siege to the fortified city. So, laying siege to fortified cities. There were 3 routes leading into the city. The generals deployed their forces on all 3 of these routes, completely surrounding and isolating the city. So, surrounding and isolating. No way in, no way out. No chance for reinforcements to come in and give supplies. Reinforcements and provisions coming to Ashaz were either captured or driven back. Exactly. Yeah, siege warfare is really quite interesting. I would never want to live through a siege. It would be quite nightmarish. The siege continued for several days. A number of sallies were made by the beleaguered garrison, but all were repulsed with losses. Yet the Kinda remained firm in their determination to fight on. So remember the Kinda tribe, clan. Sometime in mid-February 633, early Zulhajj 11 Hijri, Asha realized that the situation was hopeless. There was no possibility of success. It was only a matter of time before the fort fell to the Muslims, and then there would be a bloodbath. The next action of Ashaz was characteristic of the man. He decided to sell his tribe to save himself. He sent a message to Ikrimah proposing talks. So remember, Ikrimah. And then we have, you spell his name A-S-H apostrophe A-S, Ashaz. Ashaz. Proposing talks. Ashaz knew Ikrimah well, for in their days of unbelief, they had been good friends. Ooh. So they were friends beforehand. One becomes Muslim, the other becomes an apostate, and now they're at odds with each other. That's awkward. As a result of the proposed talks were arranged with Ikrimah and Muhajir on the one side, and Ashaz on the other. Accompanied by a few men, Ashaz came out of the fort secretly to the rendezvous. I shall open the gates of the fort to you if you will spare the lives of 10 men and their families, Ashaz offered. To this, the Muslims agreed. "Write down the names of the 10 men," said Muhajir, "and we shall seal the document." Ashaz went aside with his men and began to write down the names. It was his intention first to write the name of 9 favored ones, and then add his own as the 10th. What a sneaky bastard. But he did not notice that one of his men was looking over his shoulder and reading the names as he wrote. This man, named Jahdam, was not one of the favored 9. As Asha wrote the 9th name, Jahdam drew his dagger. "Write my name," he hissed, "or I'll kill you." That is wild. Wow. Yeah. Hoping to save himself later by his wits, Ashaz wrote down Jahdam as the 10th name. The list was complete. Muhajir sealed the document. Ashaz and his men returned to the fort. At the agreed time, he opened one of the gates, and the Muslims poured into the fort and fell upon the unsuspecting garrison. There was a terrible slaughter, and it continued until everyone in the fort had laid down his arms. Ashaz and the group of men and families that remained near him were spared. The fort of Nujair had now fallen. When Muhajir checked the list prepared by Ashaz, he noticed that the name of Ashaz was not in it. He was delighted. "O enemy of Allah," he said to Ashaz, "now I have the chance to punish you." He would have killed Ashaz, but Ikramah intervened and insisted that Ashaz be sent to Medina, where Abu Bakr could decide his fate. Consequently, Ashaz was put in chains. "Oh, you done locked up." Look at that. That's wild. I kind of understand, though, Jadam's perspective. You know, you're sitting there and you're like, "Is too gonna write my name? Not writing my name. He's not writing my name." Get the dagger. Within the fort of the Muslims had taken many captives who were sent to Medina as slaves, and these included a large number of attractive young women. They were led out of the fort and past Ashaz, and who perfectly they had by now come to know. As they slowly filed past him, the captive women looked at him reproachfully and wailed, "You traitor! You traitor!" To add to his discomfiture, Ashaz was sent with this same group of captives to Medina. That's awkward. So he's in chains. I lost, you know. And these women hate him, and he has to travel with them. It could not have been a very pleasant journey. Yeah, the mean glances, you know, like stink eye. Ashaz was no stranger to Medina. He had visited the place during the year of delegations. When the Kinda submitted to the Holy Prophet and embraced Islam. During that visit, he had also married Farwa, sister of Abu Bakr. What? He was married? He was married to Farwa, sister of Abu Bakr. Okay, so married Farwa. So we're gonna write Farwa is the sister of Abu Bakr. I didn't know Abu Bakr had a sister. But when leaving Medina, he had left her behind with Abu Bakr, with the promise of picking her up on his next visit. This next visit was now taking place under very different and uncongenial circumstances. Wow. So marriage was supposed to be like, okay, you're going to be on our side now. Oh yeah, you're going to be on our team. Get your bride. But he goes against the Muslims, knowing that he married the Caliph's sister. But when leaving Medina, he had left her behind. The Caliph charged Ashaz with all his crimes against Islam and the state. He expressed his low opinion of the way Ashaz had betrayed his own tribe. Was there any reason why the accused should not be beheaded at once? Attention had drawn to the smooth tongue of Ashaz. This time, he excelled himself. Not only did he win a pardon, he also persuaded Abu Bakr to return his wife to him. Well, I mean, that's quite generous. Oh, this guy is interesting. Who is this guy? He remained in Medina, though unwilling to return to his own tribe. Well, I mean, that makes sense. In later years, he fought with distinction in Syria, Iraq, and Persia, and in the time of Usman, he was made governor of Azerbaijan. Whoa! So he redeemed himself. So then he went on to fight with the Muslims. Wow. Okay, we have Usama. Wow. Okay, so hold on for a second. Let's... Ashas bin Qais. Okay, that's A-S-H apostrophe A-S bin B-I-N Q-E-I-S. Okay. He was able to marry Abu Bakr's sister and then went on to fight with the Muslims. But he was fighting against the Muslims at the fort of Nujair. Wow. But his treacherousness never left him. Many were the people, including Abu Bakr, who wished that he had not been pardoned after his apostasy. In fact, when Abu Bakr was dying and spoke to his friends of his regrets about things he had not done and wish he had, he said, "I wish I had had Asha beheaded." Students of Muslim history might recollect that Imam Hassan's wife, who poisoned him at the instigation of Caliph Muawiyah, for which service he paid her 100,000 dirhams, was the daughter of Ashaz. What? Wait a minute, Imam Hassan? Are they Hassan and Hussein? Is that talking about... I know the name Muawiyah a little bit. Muawiyah paid... That's a lot of money. A woman poisoned weapon. That's like a top weapon for women, is poison back in those days. That was their tactic. It wasn't being in the battlefield like Brienne of Tarth or an assassin like Arya Stark, or, you know, a gun-toting moron like Tulsi Gabbard. But poison. Oh man, that's brutal. With the defeat of Kinda and Nujair, the last of the great apostate movements collapsed. Arabia was safe for Islam. The unholy fire that had raged across the land was now dead. Arabia would see revolt and civil war many times in its stormy history, but it would never again see apostasy. The campaign of apostasy was fought and completed during the 11th year of the Hijrah. The year 12 Hijri dawned on March 8, 633, with Arabia united under the central authority of the Caliph at Medina. MashaAllah. The campaign was Abu Bakr's greatest political and military triumph. Although the Caliph would launch bold ventures for the conquest of Iraq and Syria, it was by his able and successful conduct of the campaign of the apostasy that he rendered his greatest service to Islam. So when we say, okay, Abu Bakr, and then he successfully conducted the campaign of the apostasy, and that was one of his greatest services. So Abu Bakr handled the campaign of apostasy. It's always good to write that in your annotations. And this would not have been possible without the arm of the sword of Allah. So Khalid helped in that. Khalid helped with that. Okay, now we're in part 3, the invasion of Iraq. The clash with Persia, the fort of Nujair, was the last stronghold of apostasy. Had fallen to the Muslims in about the middle of February 633. Soon after, Abu Bakr wrote to Khalid, who was still at Yamama, proceed to Iraq, started operations in the region of Ubala. Fight the Persians and the people who inhabit their land. Your objective is Hira. Where is he? Okay, so lots of this is from Tabari. That's really cool. It was a big order. Abu Bakr was taking on the mightiest empire of the time, before which the world had trembled for more than 1,000 years. Say what? Okay, so Persia. It's fascinating. So, Persia is in Iraq? So, I thought Iran was Persia. Sorry, fam. When I hear Persian, it sounds so foreign. I think of something very exotic. It's very pretty, that name. But, I don't know much about it. So, fight the Persians. So, the Persians, and so the world had trembled before the Persians for 1,000 years. The Persian Empire was unique in many ways. It was the first truly great empire of history, stretching in the time of the early Achaemenians from northern Greece in the west to the Punjab in the east. It was also in the length of time over which it flourished from the 6th century BC to the 7th century AD, except for a gap caused by the Greek conquest. No other empire in history had lasted so long in all its greatness as a force of culture and civilization and military power. It had known reverses, but after each reverse, it had risen again in its characteristic glory and brilliance. The last golden age of Persia occurred in the 6th century AD when Anushirwan the Just restored the empire to its earlier level of greatness. Anushirwan reigned for 48 years and was contemporary of Justinian. He wrested Syria from the Romans, the Yemen from the Abyssinians, and much of Central Asia from the Turks and other wild tribes of the steppes. This magnificent emperor died in 579, 9 years after the birth of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So he died. So when the Prophet, peace be upon him, was 9, that's when Anushirwan the Just died. As often happens when a great ruler passes away, Anushirwan was followed by a number of lesser mortals, and the glory and prosperity of the empire began to fade. Civil war and intrigue sapped the strength of the state. So intriguing, sapping the strength of the state. The decline approached its climax in the time of Shiruya Siroz, a great-grandson of Anushirwan, who first imprisoned and then killed his father. What? Chosroes Parvez. Sometimes we forget how brutal people are to their own parents, man. You're gonna do that to your own dad? Excuse me, pardon me? Not content with this heinous crime, he turned to worse cruelties, so that none may dispute his right to the throne or pose a challenge to his authority. He had all the male members of his family killed with the exception of his son, Ardashir. Whoa. Wow. What is this, some Game of Thrones stuff? Okay, so Ardashir murking all the men. See, a lot of women will be like, men are so privileged, they're so privileged. Man, imagine you got a crazy male family member, and then assassins are coming at you because you were born male. Wow. The estimate of those of the house of Anushirwan who lost their lives to the maniacal fury of Shirua, adult and child, varies from 15 to 18, and Shirua reigned for only 7 months before he too was dead. Oh what? See, this is interesting, because men who have accomplished something, so Anushirwan reigned for 48 years, contemporary of Justinian, seemed to be being praised in this book. I don't know much about him, but from what we have gathered here, it's like he dies, civil war breaks out, there's vying for power, and then his son, his son, great-grandson of Anushirwan, actually, takes out his dad and family members. So, just never know. You spend time building, you want a legacy. You're trying to build up your bloodline. You want to have this whole group, and then there's that one rotten egg. Comes in and just pollutes everything. And he killed 15 to 18 people and only got to rule 7 months. With his death, the confusion became worse. And there is confusion also in the accounts of the early historians about the order in which various emperors followed Shiruya and the duration of their respective reigns. All that is certain and unanimously accepted is the position of Yazdurd bin Shahyar bin Perwez, who somehow escaped the assassins of Shiruya and became the last Persian emperor of the line of Sasan. This ill-starred young man was to see the final disintegration of the great empire of the Chosroes. Between Shiruya and Yazdurd, there were about 8 rulers in a period of 4 or 5 years, and these included 2 women, Baran and Azarmidukudut, both daughters of Chiroz Parwez. The first of these, Baran, provided a wise and virtuous monarch, but lacking strong hand that was needed to arrest the decline in imperial affairs. She was crowned during the lifetime of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, who, when he heard of her coronation, made his famous remark, "A nation will never prosper that entrusts its affairs to a woman." That I remember the hadith, okay, but I've never heard it. Ouch! I said on something that hurt. I've never heard it mentioned in relation to her. Okay, so let's. Masudi Tanbih, page 90, Ibn Qutayba, page 666. So he's got citations for that. Okay, so the first of these, Baran, so Baran, she was crowned during that time of prophecy. So Baran and Azarmadikud, they're both daughters of Chosroes Parwez. So female rulers. Baran, daughter of Chosroes Parwez. We will not go into a description of all the countries which comprise the geographical domain of the Persian Empire, but will confine ourselves to Iraq. Iraq, then, was not a sovereign state. It was substantially less than that. It was not merely a province. It was considerably more than that. Iraq was a land, one of the lands of the Persian Empire. Cool. And in its western and southern parts, it was an Arab land. The Arabs have been known in Iraq since the days of Bukht and Nasar. And that citation says Nebuchadnezzar, 7th, 6th century BC. The Arabs, okay, let's see, but did not enjoy any power in the land. It was not until the early part of the Christian era, when a fresh migration of Arab tribes came to Iraq from the Yemen, that they began to command authority and influence. One of the great chiefs of these migrating Arabs, a man by the name of Malik bin Fahm, proclaimed himself king and began to rule over the western part of Iraq. 2 generations after him, the throne passed to Amr bin Adi of the tribe of Lakham, who started the Lakhmid dynasty. which was also at the times called the House of Munzir. The kings of this dynasty ruled for many generations as vassals of the Persian Empire. Whoa. So migrating Arabs. So we have chiefs, migration, Malik bin Fahm, Amr bin Adi, tribe of Lakham. The last of the house of Munzir was Noman bin Munzir, who committed an act of disloyalty against Chosroes Parvez, for which he was sentenced to death. The sentence was carried out in style. He was trampled to death by an elephant. Oh my god. This led to a revolt by the Arabs of Iraq, which was soon crushed by the emperor, and with this abortive revolt ended the house of Munzir. Elephant. I didn't even know elephants were over there. You become disloyal, you can get stomped by an elephant. How did they make the elephant do it? You know? Maybe they had like a pen and then they made the elephant really upset or something. War elephants, maybe they were trained specifically. The house of Munzir ended. Chosroes then appointed a new king, Iyas bin Qubaysa of the tribe of Tay, to rule over Iraq. For some years, the new king enjoyed a reasonable degree of autonomy. Then most of his authority was taken away, and Persian generals and administrators took over the entire government of the land. Iyas remained a titular king. A land of culture, wealth, and abundance, Iraq was the most prized possession of the Persian Empire. So a lot of us don't even know that. So Iraq used to belong to Persia, or Persian Empire. We don't learn about the Middle East history, if at all, in elementary school. It would be cool if kids could learn more about that instead of like gender pronouns and all that garbage. We could actually learn more about the world, because I think that's where our weaknesses come in. Because we think we're the only ones that matter and no one else's history means anything at all. It's really quite strange. To the Arabs from the barren wastes of Arabia, it was a green jewel, a land flowing with milk and honey. Its two mighty rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, were the greatest known rivers of the time, west of the Indus and north of the Nile. But these rivers did not then flow as they flow now, nor were the cities of Iraq then its cities of today. Kufa and Basra did not exist. They were founded in 17 Hijri. Baghdad was a small, though much frequented market town on the west bank of the Tigris. The then glorious cities of Ctesiphon and Hira are now turned to dust. Ctesiphon was the capital, a mighty metropolis, and the seat of glory of the Persian Empire, reportedly built by Ashdir bin Babak, also known as Ardshir Babakan, and Artaxerxes, the founder of the Sassanid dynasty. It sprawled on both sides of the Tigris and was known to the Muslims as Madain, literally the cities, for it consisted of several cities in one. Hira was the capital of the Arab Lakhmid dynasty. Oh, I didn't know that. So we have the Lakhmid dynasty, situated on the west bank of the Euphrates. It was a glittering, throbbing city with many citadels, and there was Ubala, the main port of the Persian Empire, which was visited by ships from India and China and other maritime countries of the east. Okay, so Ubala is a port. The Persian Empire. Ports are very important for trade, so we're going to put a notation of trade here. Uballa was also the capital of the military district of Dast Meisan, so it's also a military point area. Fascinating, man. See, history is just so rich for us, isn't it? We never really stop learning all the fundamental facts. There's just so much to learn. The Euphrates and the Tigris have been known to change their course more than once since the time of Babylon. The maps in this book indicate the course which these rivers flowed in the early days of Islam. The main difference from today is in the course of the Tigris. In pre-Islamic times it had flowed in what is its present channel, which is known as Jijlat al-Ura, the one-eyed Tigris. But then it had abandoned this channel and adopted a new course from Kut downwards along the Jujela, the little Tigris, and the Aksar, to enter a region of lakes and marshes comprising an area of about 100 miles square, just northwest of Uballa. The old bed of the river had then become a dry, sandy bed. The marshes extended much farther north than they do today. The area shown as marshland in map 10 is not exact, and the Tigris picked its way through these marshes to rejoin the bed of the one-eyed Tigris in the region of Mazar, the present Azir, whence it flowed south and southeast into the Persian Gulf. But the Tigris changed its course again in the 6th century and returned to its old bed, the one marked on all maps now as the Tigris. These, however, is not the largest branch of the Tigris, for the Garaf, taking off from Kut and joining the Euphrates at Nasiriyah, is larger. The Dujela, which in the early days of Islam was the main channel, is now a modest river, the third largest branch of the Tigris, after the Garaf and the one-eyed Tigris. So we're noticing here the branches of the Tigris River. I have known nothing about the Euphrates and Tigris except for just a little bit. But it's fascinating seeing how these riverbanks play so much in part of sustaining areas. I think we kind of lose that admiration now because of how commerce is conducted now with trade and whatnot, airplanes and such, and how we can pump water and use plumbing. But it's still quite fascinating just seeing how there's so much to see concerning the Euphrates and the Tigris and how they made and break places. The Euphrates followed a clear course down to the present Hindia, whence it split into two main channels, as it does today, both sizable rivers, the Hilla branch and the main Euphrates. So we have the Hilla branch. The main branch, the western one, again split up, flowing generally in one large and several subsidiary channels, which, over the centuries, have changed course several times, though not as drastically as the Tigris. The two main branches reunited at Samawa, whence the Euphrates flowed towards the region of lakes and marshes. While some of the water of the river lost itself in the marshes, one clear channel marked on today's map, as the Euphrates retained its distinct identity as it flowed eastward to join the Tigris at Kurna. The marshes were drained by a large river known as Maqil, which emptied into the Tigris a little north of Basra. And from this junction, all these waters flowed into the Persian Gulf as one great river, known today as the Shat al-Arab. Whoa. There's a... Oh, okay. So if you just go around and look at a map, that's cool. Many changes have taken place in the bends and twists of these rivers. I have not known these details on the maps, as there is no way of knowing how they appeared then. Hence, only the main branches of these rivers are shown on our maps. And so, twisting and turnings of that type of waterbed is interesting. I didn't know it could change like that, you know? I don't know much about riverbanks and how they behave. That is pretty cool, though, to see that it can switch up like that. This, then, was how Iraq stood politically and geographically when the Caliph launched Khalid on it. It was a land occupied by Persians and Arabs. Okay, so Iraq had Persians and Arabs in it, and ruled by a Persian court. The empire had begun to decline politically, but it would be wrong to imagine that it had declined militarily. The military effectiveness of an empire may remain at high level for decades after its political disintegration has set in. Yeah, kind of like America. And so it was with the Persians in the year 633. The Persian army, including its Arab auxiliaries, was the most formidable and most efficient military machine of the time. Led by experienced and dedicated veterans, it was a proud, sophisticated, and well-tried force, which gloried in its past achievements and its present might. The Persian soldier was the best equipped warrior of his day. He wore a coat of mail or a breastplate. On his head rested a helmet of either chainmail or beaten metal. His forearms were covered by metal sleeves, and his legs were protected by greaves, like leg guards covering the front part of the leg. He carried a spear, lance, or javelin, a sword, and either an axe or an iron mace. The latter was a favorite of much feared Persian weapon. He also carried 1 or 2 bows with 30 arrows and 2 spare bowstrings hanging from his helmet. Look at that. So, the Persian soldier, he's ready to go, like more than a video game character. He's like, let's do this. So it's funny that today's men are scared of a Glock. They feel like you can exercise your Second Amendment in America. You know? And they're like, oh, no, I can't possibly own a Glock. Meanwhile, in the year 633, the Persians are like, no, I got bow and arrow, I have a javelin, I can have a spear, I got a sword, I got my armor. Like, you know, like that's hot. Thus powerfully equipped and armed was the Persian soldier, and this was inevitable, he lacked mobility. In the general set peace battle he acknowledged no equals, and in this he was right, until Khalid, lightly armed and fast-moving riders, came along. So, movement versus, like, stacked and protected. Very interesting. Oh, man. Look at that masculinity. Just get your weapons and having to know how to use all those. How to take care of all those. People who have to make those. It's like America has reduced their men to just video game. Think about that. They wonder why men like playing violent video games. That's the only place you allow them to have any weapons at all and to actually express some of their livelihoods. Like, our ancestors, not mine because I'm not from this part of the world, but there's militaries, every tribe, you know, everybody's experienced warfare in the past. You know, it's like in our blood to try to survive and protect and do what we have to do to get going. And look at all the gear these guys had to have. And then, if you recall how I shared on my community tab, a Russian drone going in Ukraine. I don't remember, it didn't make it clear by the uniform if it was a Russian who was targeted by a drone or a Ukrainian. They look so similar, the people. But it was just, he couldn't outrun it, and it's just totally different type of warfare. And then now we have disease warfare. It's just very different. Financial sanctions. We have all different kinds of blockades and stuff. But our soldiers today, if you see some of their uniforms, they got quite a lot. You know, we have tanks, and we don't have elephants and cavalry. but tanks, helicopters, and pretty soon it'll be lots of robots, so it'll be even more bloodier. But I just think it's fascinating how this was like a raw time for humans, where you have to get face to face. You can't hide from a distance. See, that's something that's changed. Is people can hide now. I mean, there was archers, yeah, but the archers, you know, they still had to be a little bit closer. But now, snipers and stuff like that, they can just hide, you know. And drones, I think, are the most cowardly because you don't even have to see the opponent and have their ghost, like, remain in your head. It's strange, but fascinating nonetheless. So we learned quite a lot in this section. I mean, this is wild. I mean, just reading about the guy Ashas bin Qais, like, that's crazy. He married Abu Bakr's relative, was his daughter, right? The Kinda tribe, no, sister, Abu Bakr's sister, Farwa. And then it said here something about Imam Hassan's wife she poisoned him by the instigation of Caliph Muawiyah. And there was a daughter of Ashas. And then remember, Ashas betrayed his tribe, sold them out. But then remember, Jahadam, he's like, his dagger's like, write my name. Put my name on that list. And then Ashas sold out his tribe, and then he has to travel with those women to Medina, you know. And then there was the year of delegations. Okay. And then it is said here that in Tabari Volume 2, page 619, Masudi Maruj Volume 2, page 308, Balazuri, page 112, this is where Abu Bakr on his deathbed expressed that he regretted not putting Asha to the sword. So, and others could argue him allowing Ashas to live is what called the downfall of Imam Hassan. Okay? And that, remember, Abu Bakr's one of his greatest contributions to Islam was how he handled the campaign of apostasy. Okay? And Khalid bin Waleed aided in that. We're learning a lot about the Persians and how long their empire was and how it was very unique. And remember, we learned the name Anushirwan the Just, and his great grandson was pretty wild. He killed his own dad, and he killed any males in his family that could contest his ascension to the throne. Pretty scary, but he only got to rule for 7 months before he too got to taste the old medicine that he put out into the world. Okay, and then there was Yazdurjurd bin Shahrar bin Pervez, who escaped the assassins of Shirua, and he was the last Persian emperor in the line of Sasan. Okay, and then we learned that between Shiruya and Yazdurjurd there were 8 rulers, and then there was 2 women, Baran and Azarmidukt. They were both daughters of Chosroes Parvez. And when Burwan came into power, she was crowned during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. And that this is where that famous hadith comes, where a nation will never prosper that entrusts its affairs to a woman. And I've adopted this, actually. When I saw Nikki Haley, you know, I used to think that maybe someone like Tulsi Gabbard would be good, but then I saw how she became a Zionist shill and started hating Muslims, and then I realized maybe I've been psyoped, and how masculine she is, and how she's infertile, and she put military career over a family making. So a lot of women in the military have reported that when they push their body that extreme, they lose their fertility. So her career choice caused her infertility, and someone who has taken on a hyper masculine role and doesn't have any children, and you know, I don't think that's a good role model for a nation. Even though you kind of get it, like, because then she could just be a warmongering witch. But look at what Hillary Clinton would have done, just a very bloodthirsty individual. So men can be that way too, but the more I examine our nature and even my own darkness within myself, like, how would I be? I would want to be just, but the acts of cruelty I would do upon criminals would fill the history books and probably lead to my assassination, you know, because I wouldn't allow this soft on liberal crimes. You know, some people might like that, but, you know, some might not, so you never know. And that's cool to see the context of where that hadith was narrated from, according to him. MashaAllah. And he does include the nice citations down at the bottom in a small text. Instead of putting them all the way in the back of the book, we can read them on the dot, right? That's what I like. Okay. We also learned Malik bin Faham, and then he was someone who proclaimed himself king, and he traveled. He was a traveling chief. He was Arab, part of the migrating Arabs. And then he ruled over the western part of Iraq. And then at 2 generations after him, there was Amr bin Adi, and he was from the tribe of Lakham, and he started the Lakhmid dynasty, and it was also called the House of Munzir. And so they ruled for many generations as vassals of the Persian Empire. And then there's the wild thing where the last of the House of Munzir was Noman bin Munzir, and he did something to piss off Chizoros Parwez, and his death penalty was being trampled by an elephant. And that type of punishment didn't sit well, and so the Arabs of Iraq revolted, and then they took out that emperor, and it ended the House of Munzir. I mean, that's crazy. You know, like, it's a cool punishment, but it's a scary punishment. But, like, just thinking about you're alive, and then that squishiness, like your bones cracking underneath the elephant's foot. But the elephant's face, if you've ever seen the circus elephant escape, like, they use their tusks and they push you down. Like, elephant's head comes down, and you can't push them off. You know, it's like a slow way to go. Slow way to go. I wonder if anyone got to watch, you know. And subhanAllah, we learned so much. There was Iyas bin Kubaysa. He was from the tribe of Tay. He got to rule over Iraq, and he was appointed by Chosroes, alright? But he was kind of just like a fake figurehead, because the Persian generals and administrators were like, we're going to rule over this, you're just a titular king, right? But it's cool to see that Iraq was a prized possession of the Persian Empire, because I don't think all of us knew that. I mean, maybe if you're from that region, you know that, right? But there's like facts about America that even Americans don't know. I certainly did not know that, you know? So I do enjoy it. And then we learned quite a lot about the Tigris and Euphrates. You know, water bodies are pretty awesome when you think about it. And then we learned names as Ardshir Babakan and Artaxerxes, and Artaxerxes, you know, there has stuff to do with the Sassanid dynasty. And then we have the Lakhmid dynasty. So there's so many dynasties throughout time. I mean, wow, Persian Empire. It's wild. Okay. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. And then learning about just everything that the Persians wore in battle, and how much gear they had. Pretty awesome. Javelin. Whoa, spear. Okay. Let me know what you think. Great reading. Almost so. If you'd like to support my work and read more about what I write, you can go to my blog, which is www.subscribestar.com/Milahan. Hope to see you there.